way that we approach this is perhaps, we are the integrator and we can actually implement the solutions that are out there. Also, I have been asked to try to speak a bit slowly. So in case I get carried away and speak too fast, please just raise your hand and say so. As Jesus said, my name is Jan, I come from Denmark. On a daily basis, I manage Robotics, Robotic Process Automation Center of Excellence for EMEA. And this is Europe, this is India, and this is the Middle East. We will very soon be taking this global, so we'll have one consolidated center for this. So this means that on a daily basis, I work with RPA, and I'm involved in almost all of the cases with RPA we see all over EMEA. I just wanted to touch also a little bit on what Jesus also has been saying, that he told us there are these waves. Of course, I didn't unfortunately understand everything Jesus said, but I think I kind of got the notion of it. In Fujitsu, we have seen these 4 waves. You can kind of figure out what the first and the second is. The fun part here is actually the 3rd and the 4th wave. So what we're seeing right now is that on the 3rd wave is what we really call IoT. And we're seeing IoT really gathering strength out there and really accelerating with our clients. We are seeing huge IoT platforms being built up, and also IoT making its way into everything we see, right from cars to refrigerators to microwave ovens, TVs, blah, blah, blah. So really what we are on the verge of right now, and we're actually not just at the verge, we've entered this dimension with the 4th wave, and that is AI and robotics. So artificial intelligence and robotics. One thing that I would like to make very sure here is that those 2 things are not the same. They are complementary technologies, but they are not the same. That's just to put a thing out of the way here. There is a misconcept out there that's saying when we are talking about robotics, we're also talking about artificial intelligence. That is not true. They are 2 different things. You can combine them, but they are different. So, what I really wanted to touch upon is get some of these things straight. What is RPA, or robotic process automation? And this is a very simple slide, but I think sometimes it's nice just to kind of set the stage and define the terms that we're talking about here. And it is really quite simple what RPA is. It really is a piece of software that emulates the work of a human agent using the existing UI to drive the processes. So essentially, it's an automation of repetitive rule-based tasks. And quite an important thing here is this makes it a virtual workforce that can work 24/7 without any errors all year round. So it is a piece of software that emulates a human. That's what it is. And unless you attach it to an AI engine, it's nothing else. And why I'm mentioning this is that there are strengths and weaknesses for both a robot as well as a human. Now, I attended an RPA summit last week in Stockholm, where one of the sessions was hosted by, I don't know if he is the most famous, but he is one of the most famous scientists within RPA and AI. He's called Professor Leslie Wilcox, and I think essentially he has defined beautifully what RPA really is. And what it does is that RPA takes the robot out of the human. And what he means by this is, of course, that we have strength for the robots and we have strengths for the humans. And to be honest, I think that with many of these repetitive tasks that we've talked about, the robot is far superior to a human. However, there are many other things, that the very things that define us as a human, we are massively better at than a robot. So what is a robot very good at? It's extremely good at doing structured work. Structured work means rules-based tasks. So that is strictly following guidelines and doing the same things over and over again. It can do this with amazing accuracy and consistency because it only does what you tell it to do, or more accurately, what you program the robot to do. So it doesn't take any decisions that you haven't told the robot to do. It is, of course, very good at doing logical processing, and it does this 24/7 all year round. It doesn't need breaks, it doesn't need vacation, it never goes on sick leave. So that's just one thing to remember. However, when we work within a corporation or an organization, we don't all the time work with these structured and rules-based things and processes. We have a big space in what makes us human. And that is what we are very good at and what no robot, no matter how much we attach it to an AI engine, can do. We are creative and innovative. If you speak with some of the scientists and researchers that work on AI, then yes, there are some opinions out there saying that robots can be innovative as well in, say, 20 or 30 years. Then we actually also have other people saying that it will take 100 or 200 years before they reach this level. Why this is important is, right now, they are not. Another thing we are very good at is having conversations. So we can react to each other. And this is also a point where a robot is not yet. Jesus also touched upon chatbots, etc., voice response systems. They will never ever be a substitute for a proper conversation. What we are very good at also is having subjective thoughts. Now, of course, in many senses, then we try to be objective and blah, blah, blah. That's what a robot is good at. But what we really should see, what we are good at, is having subjective thought. So we can take subjective decisions in our business. We are also extremely good at handling what is called unstructured information. Unstructured information, it could be something like we can recognize an image instantly, and we can also interpret the image instantly. And of course, last but not least, ties a bit into the creativity and innovation, we can express emotion and compassion. Because I think if you think about it, in your daily business life, you will probably see more emotion and compassion than you might think, just in the way that you communicate with your coworkers, the way that you take decisions, business decisions, are usually with more emotion and compassion than you might necessarily think. So this is just actually to set these two topics apart and say the humans are very good at one thing and the robots are very good at different things. So, sorry. Why should we then move towards RPA? I think it goes without saying that RPA can bring a lot of benefits to your organizations if you think about the previous slides. One of the things, and I think what is really brought forward in the industry today, and I'm a bit sorry about that, but that's the way it is that it's usually used to promote the notion of reducing costs. And yes, it can do that. It can reduce costs of your workers. Because if you have an organization where you have a big amount of manual repetitive tasks, then yes, RPA can drastically drive down the costs of these repetitive tasks. However, my personal favorite here is actually increasing the performance of human workers. So what here we're actually talking about, with a popular term called augmenting the humans. What this means is that we can have the robot driving all repetitive and boring tasks which the humans don't really like. And the thing is that perhaps if you look at many of these employee surveys, then you will usually see that most of the reason that they give bad grades is that they don't like doing the same task over and over and over again. I'll come back to it a bit later about some use cases. However, what RPA can do is it can remove those things and actually make a human great. Make the human do what they're good at. So that's really my favorite part here. Some of the underlying, a bit more technical things here is, of course, it can avoid doing the human errors. Because one thing that I just didn't mention was, of course, that when a human does these repetitive tasks all day long, then there is room for error. Because the thing is that when they key in the same thing over and over and over again, then at one point in time, there will be an error. A robot doesn't make error. Another very good point here is that it doesn't require any changes to your existing organization or your existing systems. And why is that? That is because it works directly in the user interfaces, which are already there. There is also the point about scalability. The thing is, if you are an organization where you might experience peaks over the years, say come Christmas time, if you have a store for that matter, an internet store or whatever, come Christmas, you will usually experience a peak there where you would have to hire in more workers. That's not the case with RPA. You can dynamically scale this workforce immediately. There's no need for training, there is no need for onboarding them, etc., etc. You can scale it instantly. And then, of course, as I already said, which is important, is that it works all year round. One thing that isn't on this slide is that it is also the thing, because it is a piece of software that runs on your infrastructure, there is a complete audit trail. So everything the robot does is logged, put into a database, which you can retrieve in case your organization is audited in one point in time. This is not possible with human workers. So this is also quite important, especially for the financial vertical, insurance vertical, etc., etc. So, how do we see the RPA situation right now at Fujitsu? So what we're seeing here is, as I just said, the main verticals are in the financial, accounting, or insurance industry. However, what is a bit funny here is that it is actually very closely followed by the public sector. Now, one would think that, okay, this vertical here has always traditionally been very heavy on processors. But if we think about it, so has the public sector. So this is why that large part of the public sector is waking up to this technology and finding areas which they can automate. Especially, I think you might talk about this a bit later, but especially in the Nordic sectors, we are seeing the public sector trying to push RPA in order to increase the value of their employees. So they do what they really like and they bring benefits to the citizens. It's also big within large organizations that carries a human resource or a shared service center. In HR, as if any of you are involved in this, there are many, many processes there, especially in regards to onboarding new people, etc., etc. There are usually, just to bring a new employee on board, you might have to work in 5 or 6 different systems. So that's also why we're seeing a heavy adoption of RPA in this place. Shared Services Center also goes without saying, especially we have with service centers that have deployed ITSM systems. And usually if they have merged with other companies, you might have several ITSM systems. These will be heavily utilized here. What we're also seeing here is, of course, all enterprises all over Europe, well for that matter, are in high pressure to digitize their operations. And of course, all of them, they see a future where RPA can really be used to automate all of their routine tasks. What we're seeing here, as I mentioned earlier, we're seeing a strong interest to high and fast return on your investment. I think this is a bit sorry, but that's the way it is. There are these suggestions that one robot can potentially replace 3 to 15 humans. Those are quite high estimates, but it gives you an idea about where we are. I myself personally think that the largest driver here is actually the elimination of repetitive tasks, bringing a better and more happy workforce into your organization. I said here, by industry estimates, there will be 5 million robots by 2020. Some say 4 million, some say 10 million. What we're seeing here is that we have seen an exponential growth of the deployment of robots all over Europe. Right now, just for all information, tell you that one of the largest corporations has deployed 4,500 robots, and they will scale this to over 12,000 next year. To put this into perspective, one robot can handle between 1 to 3, 4 processes. So that is, I mean, a massive investment into RPA technology here. And also, if you kind of multiply this with the year-on-year average growth, then the 5 million plus robots in a couple of years is not far off. Good. How am I for time? Okay, good. I took these 3 case stories. 2 of them are very much into savings, the return on investments. But the last one is actually kind of my favorite part, and also one of my favorite case stories. Of course, these numbers are to a certain extent, they are estimates, and they will be growing because they keep expanding the use of this technology within their corporation. So the first one we have, which is a bank based in Northern Europe. It has global presence. It's based in Northern Europe. It is under the top 20 in Europe. So what they did, they have here today saved a total of approximately 9,000 man-hours, 7 robots running in 2 different business units. This bank, as you probably know, I mean, all banks for that matter, have a lot of different business units, and these are also in 2 different business units. And they only have these 7 processes, and this is expanding all the time. The first one is in mortgage and finance. They save, year to date, 7,000 hours with robots doing work handling payments in systems based on mainframe, web-based systems, and Win32 applications. And now, why is this important? Yes, the thing is, if you know a little bit about how the mortgage departments and banks work, you usually see that they work in many different systems. So they do what is called swivel chair work. So they sit here, work in one system, then they might actually have to key in data in another system and might even key into the third system. So this was actually happening here. This coupled together with all the loan applications and the loan payments coming in from their clients, which had to be handled manually, has until now save 7,000 hours of work. If you multiply it, it might not sound like a lot. However, if you start to say, okay, then what's the situation in 6 months from now, or 1 year from now, then you'll see it keeps on growing. The other one, I think that's kind of funny because this is actually more in the IT department. But this business unit was in the ATM and cash division. And the thing was that all the events handled by their ATM machines, you know the ATM machines, that's the cash machines, all those events were handled manually. So they had an operator, actually a number of operators sitting in a sort of operation central, watching all the time the events from the cash machines coming in, and then dispatching these events to different providers. So it could, for instance, be their security provider if they detected a break-in for that matter. It could be another provider in case that the cash machine was out of money. And the last part was actually to dispatch it to their field services provider, which was us, in case that the machine itself was broken. It might be the keypad wasn't working or the software had broken down, etc., etc. So instead of having a number of personnel sitting, watching at the screens, and doing these repetitive tasks all the same time, over and over again, we just had a robot deployed and did exactly the same. Another thing here was, and this is actually very much also into the sweet spot of robotic process automation. This is actually an insurance company. It's in the top 5 of the biggest insurance companies in the Nordics. And to define this is Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Finland, not Germany here. But the sweet spot in RPA is actually accounts payable. And if you look at account payable, then within large organizations, you usually see that your invoicing department, they spend an extremely big amount of time on handling invoices. And the reason behind this is that every single vendor has their own invoice and invoice type. I was made aware that actually the only very large organization which has a standardized invoice form is Walmart. So, but apart from them, everybody else has their own invoice form. So they would have, so the vendors would send it forward to the insurance company. They would have manual agents keying in the data. We replaced them, or we didn't replace them, we moved them on to more interesting part, more case-based work, and then replaced the repetitive task with handling the data and the invoices with a robot. This saved, so far, 5,000 hours. So and this is actually a pretty new implementation. The last one is my favorite. This is a European manufacturing company. They had a big problem. The attrition rate means that a lot of people they leave the company. So they had this problem with their call center, their service center. They couldn't keep hold of the employees for much more than 6 months to a year. So that meant that a lot of knowledge was disappearing from this company. And for this company, the service center or the call center was actually the first line of support for their clients. So it meant a lot for them to have a stable and experienced workforce. The thing was, the agents kept leaving the company because they were handling the same task over and over again. So they would rather go to one of the competitors where they might have a more meaningful or interesting job. So what we did here, and the case story for this, was not to save money. The case story here, or the business case, was to keep the employees on board and within the company. So what we did here, of course, we did the analysis. We found the processes that was most heavy and most repetitive, and we have a whole robot handle them. This meant that between 50 to 75% of these repetitive tasks is now handled by a robot. I must say that this was only implemented quite recently, so I can't really say how much the attrition rate has gone down, but there are good signs. Good. Finishing off here, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the capabilities we have in this arena. As you hopefully have heard, then we have quite a lot of hands-on experience with this technology. I think I also need to say that, Fujitsu is one of the world's largest IT companies. Some people say that we are actually the largest non-American IT company in the world. So this means that we have global reach. What we can do here is we can deliver this technology either through software as a service, through hybrid cloud, private cloud for that matter, or we can just do it on-premise. I think that many of you might sit there. I think there are security implications with this. If that is the case, we just do it on-premise. We are completely technology independent. So to be honest, we choose the tool that fits the client the best. Whether it's nice, whether it's Blue Prism, Autonomy, UiPath, whatever. The thing is, we will also undertake this journey completely end-to-end with our clients. So we will go out there and do the process discovery. We will guide you through the pilot. We can also take it into production, and we can also run it afterwards. And when we run it afterwards, that actually means that we will take responsibility for the maintenance of the robots. We are, of course, certified in these platforms that I already said. And since we are a global company with global reach, we also have global experience with this. In Spain, we actually, Fujitsu is big in Spain, so we have a very strong local presence here. They are also part of the Center of Excellence for RPA within Fujitsu. So that means that we have a very strong team here that can help you and guide you. Our practitioners here are certified in these platforms. And last but not least, of course, last month they won a big case in this RPA arena for a company in the financial vertical. Good. I think that's it from me.